for our first round table, which we bring you with our partners, London Football Exchange. The subject of blockchain and the disruption of football is in sharp focus. En nuestra primera mesa redonda con nuestros partners, London Football Exchange, vamos a enfocarnos en el blockchain y cómo está revolucionando el fútbol. Blockchain was originally devised for the digital currency, Bitcoin. However, now it has multiple uses. Sadly, our original moderator, Joseph Wallen, journalist from Forbes, has had to pull out because of personal reasons. But one of our other speakers has taken on the mantle and will be stepping up in his place. Please welcome to the stage, demos entonces la bienvenida a los siguientes ponentes, el moderador, the moderator for this session, Pablo Dana, CEO, Heritage Sports Holdings, Eneko Knorr, founder of Pheidon, Olivier Jarosz, head of club affairs at European Club Association, and Sam Jones, co-founder of London Football Exchange. Thank you very much indeed. Gentlemen, welcome along. Pablo, te paso la palabra. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to this session. It's my second time here. I was here last year. I was moderating, and I said, well, great. Next year you can, you passed the exam. Next year you can be a speaker. Well, no, I'm back here moderating because the speaker had a little issue. But I'm very proud. Moderating three incredible people, talking about what they've done, and most of all, talking about the new technologies, what's going on in football. Disruption, blockchain, crypto. Lots of words, often very complicated, and it's going to be interesting to know a little bit more about it. So we decided to try to keep it very live, also because we're quite used to, let's say, comparing and talking to our peers, and I think this has to be also questions from your side, so we'll keep it open for questions later. We will not read you out the biographies of everybody. It's a decision that with Eneko, Olivier, and Sam, we decided, but what we'll do is that each one of us will have 10, 20 seconds explaining who they are, what they do, and maybe after that, we'll get deep into what this disruption is. So allow me to introduce myself, Pablo Dana, Italian, living in Dubai since 8 years. Been a banker for the past 25 years, and in 2013, created my own company. I acquire small football teams in Gibraltar, in Spain, in Italy, in Portugal, and France. I bring them back up from lower divisions. And since last year, I'm an investor in QuantoCoin, which is one of the new applications for the bank of the future. And we try to adapt what cryptocurrency and what blockchain could be into football. We were the first one to announce payment of salaries of our players in Gibraltar, and we're also the first ones to make the first acquisition purely in cryptocurrency using QuantoCoin this year for Rimini. So maybe Eneko Knorr, so if you can tell us a little bit who you are and about your past.
Yep, thank you. I mean, it's an honor to be here. So I'm based in Bilbao after a few years in Silicon Valley, and I've been a technology entrepreneur for a long time. One of my first companies was acquired by Telefonica. I invested in different technology startups. Like one of them was TicketBiz, the ticketing company acquired by eBay, and I have another portfolio companies like Cabify, Houses, and others. So very involved in technology, and for the last 2 years, very, very focused on cryptocurrency, blockchain, so I'm super passionate about this, how blockchain is changing the world, and especially the cryptocurrencies that I think that they are going to disrupt the entire financial market.
Thank you, Eneko. Olivier Jarosz, you are affairs, you're on one side economist, but also representing the interests of some very large clubs.
Yes, hello, good morning everyone, welcome to World Football Summit. So my name is Olivier Jarosz. I'm working for the European Club Association, an association that represents 232 clubs in Europe, the sole organization on European level. Actually, we're going to have our chairman later on speaking also on behalf of the European Club Association, so definitely we'll get an occasion to hear more about our organization if you don't know yet. With regards to me, I'm more in charge of the relation between our clubs, so we have a lot of executives in our association, so mainly that part of exchanging knowledge and sharing. And actually, the key pillar of the raison d'être of the European Club Association is to represent the association towards the clubs, towards UEFA, FIFA, and also the European Union. But also we believe in the fact that we can help our members, but also beyond in knowledge sharing and best practices. So, for example, we have a dedicated club's executive program, the club management program, running in second edition, where we gather actually 43 clubs executives, and I already saw one in the room today. Well, actually, the platform to learn from each other in order to increase and make this football industry even more better.
Thank you, Olivier. Sam Jones, while you introduce yourself, I think it would be extremely important for all of us to know, on one side, a little bit more about LFE, London Football Exchange, what it's doing. So in your own presentation of who you are, I'd like to know a little bit more about it. And maybe we can also talk about Wish, which I know that
sure.
many of us are buying drones and other, I just bought something, I told you. But
you did?
That's on a separate part. But please, really, if you can tell us a little bit about you and how London Football Exchange really is breaking into this world.
Okay, good morning. My name's Sam Jones. I'm one of the founders of the London Football Exchange, very proudly sponsoring this event. We have a team of people in London, many of which are here today. We also have a team of people in Asia. Just a little bit about myself. I'm based in the UK. I'm also, my day job, if you like, is I run all brand marketing at a company called Wish, also responsible for all their partnerships globally. Wish is a company headquartered in San Francisco. We're a shopping company, mobile-first shopping company. Essentially, the story of the company is we have about 400 employees. We ship about 3 million products a day, all from China. About 1 million merchants in China. We send consumer products direct from merchant to consumer, 400 million customers globally. We built the business on Facebook. Facebook ads, very effective for the business, but we're starting to try and use sport to legitimize our whole story, given we're largely unbranded products. So we appear on the jersey of the LA Lakers, who obviously just acquired a pretty interesting player. We did our first piece in football over the summer with Neymar, Buffon, Pogba, Bale. So football's very much in our radar. So that's what I do with Wish, but my greatest passion is the London Football Exchange, and yeah, I can explain a little bit about that. So when we think about the London Football Exchange, we've split the offering into two distinct arms, and when I say we, this is a group of people whose background is largely in investment management. That's kind of the core of the team, and the first arm of the business is actually about the relationship between the fan and the football industry. And we think the fan is the biggest loser in the last 20 years of football. You know, players, broadcasters, managers, they've all gone on to make millions and millions. And we think the fan's kind of probably the biggest loser in that time frame. And by nature of being a football fan and belonging to a tribe, you're ultimately disconnected. You're not connected to all of the other fans of the world, and we think there's a huge amount of potential if you could unite the fans and give them some purchasing power. And we think blockchain technology represents a pretty interesting opportunity for that. We're very, very cautious when it comes to the blockchain, and I think there's a lot of players and ex-players and teams and leagues and so on that now have an offering in this space, and I think 90% of them will not be here in 2 years. You know, so we're very cautious about that element of our business.
Sorry, what we're saying, and we agree on this before, is that a lot of noise is being done around the blockchain and cryptocurrency through a lot of pseudo actors who have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my 12-year-old daughter just did a project about the blockchain, you know, and it was all about, you know, why it's here to stay, and all of the things it removes, you know, friction in the marketplace, transaction plus 4 days, you know, all of these things. She actually taught me a lot about it. And I think blockchain as a technology is undeniable, but some of the currencies that sit on that infrastructure, you cannot insure against them, you cannot hedge them. Really, you're relying on hope, and hope is the key ingredient of a bubble. So, you know, without question, we really like this space, and we're developing something in this space. But I think that the most important thing I've learned is if you're in this technology piece, you need to offer a utility. Like the most important thing, anyone you meet in this space, they need to offer a utility, and it needs to be a cross-border utility. So whoever can offer ticket sales or even buying a beer in any stadium in the world, if that's the utility they offer, that's unimaginably powerful. And if someone gave me $1 billion today, the first thing I would do is go and sponsor every single major club on the planet. And then I would tell them, we want to sell tickets to your club on this platform and your shirts. And then I would go and buy some broadcast rights, and I would say, to watch this footage, you need to own our token. But these are the kind of numbers that you will need if you are to be the player that category kills everyone else. So we're in that space, we love it, but it's only a part of our offering. And the second part of our offering is something we call LFE, Sports Capital. And this is totally different to the technology piece. And they actually make no sense why they're next to each other, except for one reason. And the second piece is actually all about how a club manages their receivables. Now, let me give you an example. In the mid-1980s, the best team in the world their shirt was sponsored by Crown Paints. It's Liverpool Football Club. Now, that cost about £100,000 to sponsor that jersey. Now, Crown Paints make great paints. You can still buy them today. But Crown Paints are not investment grade. Now, today, Liverpool's shirt is sponsored by Standard Chartered, who are investment grade. I think in the next 2 years, you'll see a jersey trade for $100 million. I think if you look at clubs and their largest inbound receivables, jersey deals, player receivables, broadcasting, some clubs are getting £100 million a year. Now, if you're a club and you have £100 million a year, there is an ability to unlock some of that liquidity. And there are merchant banks who have been doing this for years. But the price of that, of essentially removing that risk from you to someone else.
Factoring.
Yes, the price of that is 7 or 8%. That is mispriced risk. And that's exactly what this part of our business looks at. So we will fund, or we will help people find an institutional investor who will say, we are owed £100 million, not by Crown Paints, by Sky PLC, investment grade AA. And the price for that is probably more between 4 and 5%. So the second part of our business is all about sitting at the table and helping very, very large clubs. They have to be large because the ticket size of these sorts of deals is like $100 million. So it has to be a big club or a collection of clubs in a single league. And we provide equity and debt solutions to help them release some of that liquidity. Ultimately, with the objective of building a new stadium, building an academy, and growing the revenue base. That's the goal. I mean, you could buy, a new player to improve your team, and that's essentially your business.
Sam, let me jump on it, because sitting on your right is Olivier, Jarosz. You say we could provide this kind of service, for example, to one or several clubs. Would this be the case, for example, of European Club Association, where they could take in
Yep.
to your concept, take into your products, and start offering it? How would you see this, Olivier?
Well, as I said in my initial introduction, we are a stakeholder and we gather 232 club members. As you could imagine, we have various types of members throughout our 54 national association. But one thing I think it's very interesting to analyze in this blockchain is you have to dissociate somehow the interest to the financial part, the cryptocurrencies, and actually you're an expert because Rimini, Gibraltar involved, and we saw in the past, especially in Turkey, clubs involved in signing players. Also, now I've seen there's another club in Brazil. So this is a part which is definitely financial and it's growing, but to a certain extent, probably as you mentioned, Sam, it's the first part and also ultimately something that is a bit of the hype. But the second part, I think this is very interesting, is we can see that clubs are interested by, I would say, the whole concept of the DLT, the distributed ledger system, which makes that we have the whole blockchain system of database behind. And I think we saw recently Paris Saint-Germain, for example, they signed with Socio. Today also it was announced that Juventus will develop this token system with the fans. So this is, as you said, the missing somehow part of involvement of the fans. But also we see that it could be very interesting for example, for many clubs to access in the blockchain to the marketplace. So for example, I see some of the English clubs are very interested to have their products on the marketplace, which allow them to sell on a worldwide level, like basically Under Armour develop the blockchain part. So this is something which is increasingly. And the last example I'd like to give is I recently discussed with the owner of a Swiss club who actually said that the blockchain technology could be very much of use when it comes to scouting and have access to player data performance within the Swiss amateur leagues. So this is something which in my view could be very interesting because it would help to basically see the invisible part, which is actually what blockchain entails for.
Not only seeing the invisible part, but also bringing transparency to the whole world of football. And I think that one of the basics about the blockchain technology as a whole, if we can say, or maybe the smart contracts, and I will come now to Eneko maybe to help us understand better these terms, but using the smart contracts, for example, in players trading, to make things very clear, to make things very transparent, to stop hiding, to stop having money going around, stopping corruption. I know it's utopia, but this is something, at least in my little, it's something that I'm pushing. It's also good advertisement for us to be showing that it's possible to do it in a different way. Now, Eneko, I think it's, you're not in the football industry. I think it's important for our audience to explain a little bit better, as you're a crypto fan, if we can say, somebody who understands, to explain us a little bit better what's tokenization, crypto, blockchain, DLT.
So first of all, what I wanted to tell the audience is that we are talking about something that is real and is not science fiction. And I mean, it's funny because I teach blockchain at the IE Business School, and it's funny to see that my students, they look at me like I'm talking about something that's not going to happen. And tokenization is something that is real and is happening. And I think this is one of the most interesting things that is going on these days. Is tokenization. I'll give you an example of the a different world from the football, and it says, so you can take a building, real estate, and divide it into small tokens and sell it to people all over the world. So it's a very easy way to get liquidity for an asset that is usually not liquid, or at least not easily not easily sellable to tons of people at the same time. And one of the trends that I see is like the tokenization of football teams and players and athletes. So that's something that I find really interesting. Imagine that there is a very promising athlete, but the guy spends the entire day, he's working at Pizza Hut because he has to make a living for that, and But if you could give the guy money to quit Pizza Hut and to focus on playing good football and training with the best coaches and everything, so this guy can have a successful career, this kid. And so you buy, the way to do this is that you buy the rights. So this athlete sells tokens, so you buy the rights for the future earnings for this athlete, which is, I think it's something that is very interesting and is going to happen soon. So you own a piece of an athlete, and I think it's something that is going on today and is going to be something interesting in the future.
Which has already been the case in the past, and it has been prohibited if we take the case of the third-party ownerships.
Exactly. So in the football industry, there have been cases, and it's forbidden in different regulations. But I think that it could be a very interesting trend.
How do you see the blockchain use, for example, in everyday's operations? Let's assume, for example, I heard you talking about healthcare. Let's talk about maybe trading. How does this work?
So the blockchain is a technology that is going to be implemented in tons of industries. One interesting use case is the supply chain. So usually if you buy something that's coming from China, you don't know where it comes from, and you buy fish that you don't know if the fish is actually the one that you are buying, I mean that kind of fish. So the supply chain gives all the traceability from the beginning to the end, to all the parts of the business, where is the fish in every moment, who is buying, who is selling. So that's the basics of the blockchain. It's a public ledger and open, and everybody can track it, and it's immutable. I mean, in a database, somebody can change the database or something. In the blockchain, nothing can be changed. So this is a use case from the actual world, and that's why with this example, what I mean is that tons of things can happen also in the football industry and in other industries that apparently are very traditional, and nobody would think that the real innovation can be applied there.
Before going back to Sam and to what's maybe the most important when we don't talk about enough, the fans, supporters, talk about transparency. When I did the Rimini deal a month ago, the lawyer who was in charge of the deal asked me to provide actually the address of the digital wallet of the company. And I was like, why? I'm not a tech guy, I'm football. I use technology and blockchain technology. And I said, no, I just want to verify the last transaction that you've done, and if it's really linked to football industry and deals, and if there are not other strange things. And actually providing my address, he could immediately have access to all the types of transactions. That's a blockchain. So for the first time in my life, it was easy to me to show transparency. So having the address of a digital wallet of anybody, you can just go on Waves or wherever, and you can see all the transactions he's done, which I think it's very important in today's business of open.
Exactly. That's an interesting case of transparency. If somebody, I mean, anybody can try, I mean, can prove that you already paid the player, because you can go to our website and check that the transaction has been done, which is super interesting.
Absolutely. Some fans. I want to go back to the fans. Fans. The ones we didn't think about, as you said this morning to me, while we were struggling to find a coffee, which we didn't have. Tell us more about how London Football Exchange wants to bring more of the fans into this new world, into blockchain.
Yeah, so let me just finish my story, and it will sort of loop back in. So I think if you think about football 20 years ago, just in the UK alone, the TV deal was about £670 million 20 years ago. Today is 5.1 billion. So in 20 years, it's 9x or something like that. So that attracts a totally different level of sophistication of investor. Now, we've seen this before. If you look at real estate in the late 90s or early 2000s, you had people looking at mortgage-backed securities. And a lot of smart guys got involved in that space. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, a company called Lehman Brothers, and they would wrap up thousands of mortgages and sell them as a security, AAA. Except if you unpicked all of those thousands of mortgages within that wrap, there would be people with no proof of funds borrowing $1 million, and no jobs, in fact. And they were being sold as AAA. That is a mispricing of risk. Football is doing the same. It's a new level of sophistication of investor. The difference is, this is AAA. This is Sky, this is Standard Chartered, this is Chevrolet, this is Emirates. Who are your receivables? So the reason we're in this business of helping people fund their receivables differently, if there's someone in the room that gets 25 million kit deal with Adidas for the next 10 years and they're part of the national team or whatever, you can unlock that now to develop your team. But the reason we're doing that is in the fan technology arena, which is what you're asking about, there is probably, and I'm guessing there's probably 300 players who have something in the blockchain or crypto or coin or token world. There's probably 300 or 400 players that are linked to an athlete or a team or a particular sport. The price to advertise that business to be relevant on the airwaves of sport is unimaginably high. Most of them won't even survive 6 months. The second thing is they will not have a utility, so they will just not make it, and there'll be one individual that category kills them all, or 2 or 3 maybe. The reason we're on the other side of the table in the receivables funding space is because at that table we can influence the other discussion. If you're at the table with the owners of a club talking to them about unlocking their shirt deal revenues for the next 10 years, you have the ability to say, hey, would it be possible that we could fix your ticketing issues and pull you into a consortium of clubs that do this? Now, I went to the World Cup final this year. I went to the semi-final and the final. I was surrounded by empty seats where I was sat. And yet I know people were trying to get in paying $10,000 a seat. If all blockchain did was fix ticketing and remove touts, that would be enough. That's a big enough problem. And I think, we were guilty at London Football Exchange of having a whiteboard with 1,000 ideas, of how we could fix the fan experience, with merchandise and broadcasting and season tickets and this, that, and the other. And the issue is the clubs don't have a big enough reason to do that, because a lot of clubs are programmed into selling sponsorship to survive, and they're not just going to relinquish certain categories of their business to someone on the promise of fixing a solution. So I think for the fans, probably the number one priority at the moment is creating a global or cross-border platform where you can purchase and sell tickets, and you can remove these scumbags that are the touts. And you can, because of the massive increase in broadcast revenue and shirt deals and all the rest of it, you can drop the price for people to enjoy football. I would say that, football through the blockchain could fix that, reprice the fan experience, and remove the parasites who.
Do we have a figure of how much that will represent in pounds or euros?
Do I have a figure what?
Of how much money that would represent, all the ticketing in stadiums of.
Someone here will. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but.
I think we must be talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
Well, I think the person who fixes that problem is not going to be thinking about the revenue they're going to make. They're going to think about, if I'm first and I build a platform which, through blockchain, figures out every seat in football, then the value of their business will be the data they collect. So if you are so you can do that that can cost nothing. You should be implementing that in every single club. The problem is to implement that in every single club, you're going to need a certain amount of money to sponsor these clubs to get their attention. Then you need to strong-arm them into using the platform. In terms of how many people go to games globally and what the number is, I mean, I don't know, $1 billion or more.
Olivier, what do you see? How do you see your clubs? Those are part of your association. How do they implement? And I have signs from the back that we have to wrap it up. But how do you see, maybe in closing a little bit, this session?
Yeah. Well, again, the 232 clubs are in completely different approach of not only blockchain but in many different areas. And just before we started, we also discussed how do they approach esports, for example, and this is also a completely different subject. But what I wanted to say, and I think it's very interesting, is while we were deciding to republish the club management guide, which tried to see how a club football is organized and operates, we tried to have a read through the blockchain perspective, and it's quite fascinating to see how many direct application can be done. You refer to smart contracts, you refer to the fun and ticketing. So actually we didn't do a whiteboard and try to find out the direct application. But it's very interesting to see, for example, how we could apply it to women's football, especially in the crowdfunding system. Because, for example, we're really attached to the fact to develop women's football, but usually women's player also, you don't have really a proper scouting system for women's football either. So this is, for example, where you could have through the digitalization of figures of data from the amateur leagues, for example, to implement and get the performance of players. So actually, instead of having a dozen, thousand of scouts or sports director trying to find out the next future great player, you could through the database or through the blockchain actually try to find out the biggest potential. And it reminds me this case of this English player. I mean, actually, he was not English. He signed for an English club, and he was only doing free kicks. So on YouTube, you could see how he performed well with free kicks. And actually, when he signed with the English club, he was not a very good player. But this is also because there is no track system of that player. So I'm pretty sure this is exactly a concrete application of within this crowdfunding. And maybe another thing which I wanted to mention is within the youth football. Also, we actually working very hard also on trying to find ways to improve the recognition of the work of youth academies. And I think here, with the blockchain approach, it would be interesting to maybe implement a system of kudos where you can really assess the real input of each academy, because currently the system is based on national association, whereas in the end each academy provides a specific performance and support the player. So I really think this is something to further develop, and in the end it's somehow a new technology, but at the same time it needs still to find its mark. So we're really looking forward to see how this can be concretely implemented.
I know you want to wrap us up, but I still have one last question for Eneko.
Please go ahead.
Spain. I know you're from the Pays Basque, but how do you see Spain compared to other countries in the understanding and the advancement into this new technology?
So I'll take only 10 seconds, so because we are running late. So it's, I mean, comparing to the United States or maybe even some countries in Asia, the adoption of the blockchain technology is a little bit behind, but I think that we are catching up quickly. But it's important is people that have to believe that they have to jump into this technology as soon as possible, because otherwise they're going to be left behind.
Thank you. I think we're done.
I think we're done. Thank you very much to all of you. I don't know about you guys, but it's a new area for me. Blockchain, una nueva área bastante difícil. He aprendido muchísimo. I think I've learned a hell of a lot from listening to you guys and just taking a couple of headlines from what you guys were saying, that the utility is key. If anyone can really hone in on that, then ultimately they might crack this game, what you were saying, Sam, and also fascinating that blockchain could potentially reprice the fan experience. That is a bold claim, and we'll see if it plays out. So please welcome me in thanking once again Pablo, Eneko, Olivier, and Sam Jones. Un fuerte aplauso, por favor, para nuestros ponentes. Thank you very much, guys.